into a new human capital management system, a new core HR, payroll, and time system in the middle of December 2017. And so we are providing some trainings to help folks make that transition. And so the reason why we are providing the trainings is, of course, we want you to be set up for success as we move into the new system. And the reason why we're converting to a new system is, of course, because we are currently operating on 3 different HRIS platforms. And so it makes it really hard to gather data. There's a lot of manual processes being done. There will still be some manual processes that exist. And then from a time perspective, the transmission to payroll right now, it's fairly inconsistent in terms of how it's done across the company. And so to improve our compliance with the Department of Labor, to make sure that we're always paying folks accurately, we're moving to a new time system as well. Okay. I also want to mention, so we are on the GoToWebcast platform. So there's a bit of a delay. I'm going to do my best to manage the delay. Okay. We had to use this particular platform for these trainings because of the number of folks that are attending the trainings. And the other thing that we're doing right now is we're actually shooting a YouTube video just of the screen live while we are doing this particular training. And so I just ask for a bit of your patience because we have to transition over in a couple of parts and chunk out the parts of the training so that when we upload it to our Gatehouse Media ADP Vantage training YouTube channel, it actually is, kind of makes sense. So thank you in advance for that. Okay. So we're going to review 3 forms today. We're going to review the new hire, rehire, and transfer form, and we're going to review the change form for employee level changes, as well as the termination form. Okay. This training, will run the full 90 minutes. And so I appreciate your time. One thing I do want to mention is, of course, across Gatehouse, there isn't a one-size-fits-all because, of course, in many markets, we have different practices as it relates to, who completes this form and, whether it be the manager or whether it be human resources. Human resources participated in a training yesterday, as well as some trainings earlier in November to help make the transition to ADP Vantage. And we want our managers to be equipped with the information in regards to what data is gathered. Even if you're not completing this form, I know folks are really busy, but it is helpful for you to understand what goes into the HR entry and the data that we gather. So just appreciate you participating in this particular training today. Okay. And some of it may be completely relevant for you, all of it may be, or very little. However, I do think there's a lot that you can get out of this. And so again, thank you so much. When we talk about ADP Vantage and the transition to Vantage, there are 3 roles within the Vantage system. The first is the employee role, okay? The next is the manager role, and then there's a practitioner role. And the practitioner role is really reserved for the human resources and payroll practitioners who are using this system for the purposes of their jobs, okay? Every employee that ends up being registered in Vantage will have the ability to use the employee self-service options in the Vantage system, which is also a reason why we're moving to this platform and we're really excited about it, is because right now we don't have employee self-service consistently across the company. And so this is, very common for companies of our size. And so we're very excited to offer that feature. It will allow employees to go in and update their direct deposit information directly, or their their address, phone number, that sort of basic demographic information. And so it makes the process a lot more seamless for them, and they can see it and make sure that everything is up to date online. Okay. Um, Registration is very important, and there will be further communications that come out about that. There's some videos on our YouTube channel that speak to registration. We want as many folks registered in Vantage as possible, because that's what's going to help us use the system to its fullest. Okay, so employees can't update their phone number if they aren't in fact registered on the Vantage system. Okay, and so we have instructions and support to be able to do that. Okay, so so I hope that provides some introduction and context to these trainings and some of the trainings that you'll hopefully participate on next week as well, or the week after. We're very excited about this system. It's a great thing for Gatehouse as a whole, and appreciate your investment in terms of time for these particular trainings. Okay. The other piece that is important that I want to mention right up front is related to information security. We are obviously, when we're completing these forms, we're sending, what is extremely confidential and private employee level data, either through email or potentially through fax, or, in some locations, you might be leaving it on somebody's desk. We need to be very mindful of the confidentiality of this information, and be mindful of how we're sending it. So our IT team does a fantastic job making sure that gatehouse to gatehouse email is already encrypted, okay, and that there are strong firewalls, okay, and particularly in the cases of new acquisitions, the IT team is out even before the acquisition closes, and they're out as soon as it closes, to make sure that our information security is up to date. So they do a great job with that. In terms of fax, which is sometimes how this information is transmitted to your regional HR processing administrators, please make sure if you're sending something via fax that it is in fact secure, and additionally that the receiver is knowing that it's coming and it's a relatively private area in terms of a fax, because we don't want just anybody picking up these forms and of course getting access to that confidential information. Okay, so just a quick little note on that. Appreciate everybody's support as we work through that. So we're going to dive into part one of this training. Okay, we're going to split the new hire form into part one and part two. Okay, and so again, I'm going to do my best as I scroll to manage the time delay. It's about a 20-second time delay. And so I just, again, appreciate your patience with that, okay? So as you can see at the top, and this is consistent across all the forms, we want to see who completed it, okay? And we want to see the HR representative. In some cases, it's the same. And in that case, the HR folks have been instructed to just complete same, okay? And then we move into the employee identification section, okay? So we want to make sure we know who we're talking about. The reason why employee ID and file number are on here is because this form is also what you would use for a transfer. And in that case, the employee ID will certainly stay the same. A transfer, a true transfer, is when we are moving someone from pay group to pay group, or legal entity to legal entity. And so many of you, of course, are familiar with your existing pay groups and you're used to this information. Of course, what are we doing with the transition to Vantage? We're, of course, changing that pay group structure. So your HR team has mapping documents, okay, and I'm going to refer over, even though I know we're on a bit of a time delay, I'm going to refer over to my mapping documents. And what I would suggest you do is you get those documents from your HR representative, you save them in a file, and then you create a little shortcut for yourself, so that way it's right on your desktop and you're able to access those forms pretty easily, okay? Because You're going to need that for the location table. You're going to need it for the job code table. You're going to need it for the company and pay group code mapping, okay? And then there are some other data elements where it might be useful. And so right now, what we have is this particular spreadsheet is our mapping. And if you didn't know this, it's actually kind of interesting. Gatehouse Media actually has 83 different legal entities that roll up to the full Gatehouse Media LLC. And so as you can see, I'm scrolling through, I'm seeing Gatehouse Media Arkansas Holdings, Gatehouse Media California Holdings, Gatehouse Media Illinois Holdings. And a little caution for you, don't assume just because you operate in a particular state that you just pick, Gatehouse Media New York Holdings, and that's, the legal entity for which you work or for which the employee works. You really have to map it through with your pay group. And so you can see in column B that you have the existing pay group, whether it be ADP Payforce, HR Anytime through Bridge Tower, or UltiPro that is currently being used in the Southeast region, or the new Vantage pay group, which is in column E of this particular spreadsheet. And again, you can obtain these forms either from your regional HR director, or you can obtain them from your local HR representative, okay? And we're very happy to get you this information in these forms, okay? So I'm going to click back over here to my new hire form, and I'm going to scroll down and just wait a minute because I know we're on a bit of a delay. Thankfully, I have Kathy Gilbert here who's going to be talking to you about job codes in a little bit, and so I can see the delay, and we just want to make sure we're timely. So the employee data form, as many of you know, is also a form that employees themselves complete upon new hire, okay? The employee will be providing the SSN on that form. So on this form, you really only need to provide the last 4 digits. We will make an edit to this form and resend it out to make sure that it's clear that it's the last 4 digits, okay? So then we just keep going through, we keep following along with the form and just complete the information based on the employee demographic information that we in fact have. And then we get down to a section that talks about, and that's looking for email address. And so we know that there's a certain population of employees at Gatehouse Media that do not have email. They don't have work email, okay? Wouldn't necessarily be practical for them, but they might have a personal email. And so what we're asking you to do is, particularly at that new hire stage, it's critically important for us to get a personal email address or work email address, because again, to register in Vantage and fully use the functionality, it's much easier if they actually have an email address. And there is a workaround which we have outlined in the registration manual, as well as the registration YouTube video, registering without an email address or smartphone, but it is easier if we have that, and of course then we can use it for notifications. So just want to talk about that proactively and say that, of course, we very, very much appreciate your support in gathering that information, okay? We're going to talk about job title and job code, but we're going to do that in part 2 of this particular training. And we're almost at part 2, but just because of timing, I want to talk a little bit about some of the other data elements on this form first. One of the big pieces that you're going to see on every one of the forms has to do with identifying or not whether somebody is a manager, okay? And so we ask the question, does this employee have direct reports? And we have employees at Gatehouse who are managers, but they don't have direct reports. And so essentially they're managing a process or a program or a product potentially, but they don't have direct reports. And so when we're talking about ADP Vantage, what we're talking about is a manager having direct reports. And the reason why that's so important is that information feeds directly over to the time system, okay? And so what's very exciting is, of course, we're moving to a time system where all managers will be able to see all of their employees, their hours worked. If they're hourly, they'll be able to see punch in time, punch out time, meal periods, to ensure that we're paying folks correctly, okay? And, to take some of the manual work out of tracking hours for the purposes of payroll. So we need that manager information to be 100% correct, okay? The next piece, of course, is we have standard hours, and that's so basically standard hours somebody would work in a week, okay? Hourly employees will be paid off their punches. So for example, if you have a part-time employee and you put in a standard hours of 20, they end up working 25 hours. That's actually not the end of the world because they're going to be paid off, their punches. And then we have, of course, are they full-time, part-time, regular, or temporary? That's just information that, you need to complete that we need to know, okay? Of course, we have work location, and one really important note, if you're using, one of the legacy systems, the work location is actually what is mapped over to the general ledger, okay? And so in the new system, we're going to talk about it further, but we have the payroll department number and cost center that actually is what feeds over to the general ledger, okay? So now work location truly means, hey, this is where somebody actually physically works, okay? And so the way that those particular codes were put together is using the state as the first two pieces of the code. The next two pieces of the code are the city, and then finally we have a numerical to indicate, 1, 2, 3. For example, in Florida, in Jacksonville, we have 3 locations. So there's FLJA1, FLJA2, FLJA3, just for example, okay? And then another one of the manual mapping documents that we have is, of course, the code, the location code, and the physical address, okay? So that's something that you can use and refer back to, okay? So what I'm going to do right now, the next piece below, you can probably see on the screen right now, just me scrolling through the spreadsheet of the locations. Again, you can obtain that through your HR business partner. We are going to talk just briefly about this compliance information back on the form. And so you can see we want the employee classification. That's what drives benefits. So that could be full-time, part-time, non-benefit. And then if somebody has a union, you're going to note that. None of the union codes are changing. So we're going to just keep that the way that it is. Okay? So you can just complete that like you normally would. So we're going to move on to part 2 of the training, and part 2 is going to kick off with Kathy Gilbert, our HR project manager, who is going to talk to us about the job titles and the job codes, because there are some very important things to note on this particular piece. And if you'll just give us 30 seconds, we're going to just transition over. That would be very helpful. So I'm going to mute the line, and then we'll join back in about 30 seconds. So you can grab a sip of coffee or water, and then we'll get started again.